All right, so a couple of you have been writing me a few questions, so I've decided to take the time to answer them in a very relaxed way. The first question that I've been getting, which a lot of people have been asking, is what does Sean Combs look like? Well, I would say that, the artists do a very good job at getting the gray hair right. I think what you can't get by not being in the courtroom is just his demeanor. If you were at a restaurant and he was sitting two tables away, if he had his glasses on, you would not know that it was Sean Combs. He is about 15 to 20 pounds lighter. He is all gray. And I know that we saw him gray during COVID, but it felt like it was more gray. And we have to think that COVID was, a few years ago. We know how those gray hairs come in. They're belligerent, unruly. And so his beard and his hair, his posture, he has a leg that sometimes he taps under the table. So this grandiose, I'm king of New York, Sean Combs is not there. So by his look and by his demeanor, you wouldn't be able to know that it was him. I also noticed one thing that, he's able to wear limited clothes from his closet. And I noticed that the back of one of his sweaters was not very aligned with the collar. And I thought, if this was Sean Combs circa 2024 and in March, that somebody would have aligned that. Somebody would have made sure that everything looked good. He also wears these glasses that will throw you because they're not particularly stylish or fashionable. But hey, listen, that's not the goal. Let's put it this way. He doesn't look like a swinger that, you would sign up for. He does look like that uncle at the barbecue who you get a plate for because his leg hurts. I think this is a good question. Listen, if you're a member of the public, you have the right to go to the trial. You just have to get there early. When Cassie was on the stand, people were there the day before. They were sleeping out, or big news organizations, they might pay somebody $30, $40 an hour to come at 3 o'clock on Sunday, stay all of those hours into the morning at 8 a.m., and then they would arrive and take that person's place. They would give them some money. So you really do have to be committed. And I will say that a lot of people are committed, and not just journalists. There are people in the public who are following this case as if they were attorneys for it. I met one today. I'm sure that she would not mind her name being said, Denise, because she was so adamant and so interested in the case. She is just following this and swallowing it up. Really, these are the people in the public, from their eyes, they're the potential jurors. So I always want to hear what they are thinking, what they are saying, because they represent the public, because they are members of the public, and the public are the jurors. All right. The jurors are so important to this whole process. And I covered the Sean Combs trial in 2001. This was the shooting trial where Jamal Shine Barrel, he did go to jail, but Sean Combs got off. Johnny Cochran was representing him, as well as a number of great attorneys. And that happens in all of these cases. You get to see some really, really good work from some really superb attorneys and judges. But I have people who I've known, met in those lines now 24 years ago, and we're still friends because you're in the line early in the morning, you're standing in the lines. I mean, you talk to the people who are there. So that's the really lovely part, is that I get to meet some really great people. I mean, that's just what happens. I'm sure that, the people in the jury too, they will keep in contact with each other after something like this that is so emotional and so trying and that pulls you away from your family. Well, that's what happens. Bonding happens that you just don't experience anywhere else but in the courthouse at 500 Pearl Street in New York. Nobody. Nobody's winning. Who's telling a good story is really the better question. Who is telling a good story? They actually both are. They really are. They're telling a good story. I think it all depends upon the credibility of their witnesses. You had Cassie that was the witness. I think that had she not been pregnant, there would have been more of a build up to her. Today, there was a corroborating witness of Cassie, for example, Don Richard. Don Richard. Dawn Richard. There you go. And She again was someone who was supporting Cassie. Can I start over? Supporting Cassie in what she said, to corroborate things and how Cassie was beaten up. But you know, when she told a couple of her stories on cross, it didn't seem like she was as consistent as she could have been. She said that she remembered things the best that she could, but when that happens, it looks like you're a liar. I'm not calling her a liar. I'm just saying that when you're on the stand and you've known that you've been a part of this trial and you've given statements all along the way, because you don't just give this statement on the witness stand, you give depositions beforehand that both sides look at. They want to see what you're going to say. And when that happens, if you stray from it, it doesn't make you look that good. It makes you look like you're not telling the truth. And by the end of today's cross with Dawn Rashar, you had her agreeing with the attorney that, yes, there were a few things that she was not consistent about, which made her look like she was not telling the truth. Now, I thought she was going to be a very important witness. Listen, this was someone who has a civil lawsuit against Sean Combs for many, many things, from sexual assault to hostile work environment to copyright infringement. She said that she wrote songs that she didn't get paid for. So she is suing for a lot. I was very interested in hearing a little bit about that. And I thought that that would come up today because by the time her cross got done, the defending attorney rather, was trying to get out from her that she filed this lawsuit in order to get money, making it seem that maybe that was the only reason why she filed the lawsuit and that this whole process of her even being involved was because of some money grabbing venture. I'm not sure if she brought the point home, but I do wish that the witness would have said a little more kind of specifically that, part of it was copyright infringement or that she was overworked and she didn't get paid for those hours. Listen, the most surprising thing that I've seen, the surprising things that you've seen, there's no need to go into it. It's all in the news. Yes, these things are interesting and crazy and disgusting, but as many people have reminded me, it's not disgusting to some people. Some people live their lives that way. So you have to take the judgment out of it when you're sitting there, not only as a journalist, but sitting there as a jury that is expected of you, that you are supposed to be an impartial juror. So that, according to the Sixth Amendment, the defendant does get their fair trial. I will say this, that in listening to the escort, well, we have heard of one escort so far. We've heard names of other escorts that were involved in these freak offs. I think that the defense is willing to give up this notion that Sean didn't have people cross state lines for prostitution. I think that they're willing to say, listen, this is our lowest charge, up to 10 years. Let's concede that. I mean, there hasn't been anything else but that in terms of understanding what has happened. So I think that that is going to be a given. But connecting those dots in those closing arguments, that is what's going to be key. So far, the dots, and we have a lot more witnesses to go through, right? I'm very interested in hearing from Cassie's mother. Today we heard, I saw the security guard, Gene, what's his last name? Put it in the comments. But he makes his rounds on all the social media and all these shows. But Gene was there. Gene Deal, is that right? I better get it right. Is his name Gene Deal? Why, yes, it is Gene Deal. I just checked it out. But I did see him and he was leaving for lunch and he said he was going to be coming back. So I think that closing arguments, that's what's going to sew everything up. We're going to hear from more witnesses. We are going to hear the closing arguments really tie things up. Because so far what we have are different storylines. So with the closing arguments, what we're doing is we're waiting for that unusual suspects ending, Kaiser Soze. Pull it all together for us, right? The Sixth Sense. What was that I just saw? Oh, he was dead, right? We need somebody to, at the end, bring that together. Closing arguments are important. More importantly, I think that the jury is important. Looking at some of their reactions. There's one juror in particular, she always gives very vivid facial reactions. She will purse her face. She will shake her head if something doesn't make sense. Can't play poker with her. All right. So that wraps up some questions that you've given. Thank you and see you next time.